Okay, guys, so today we are going to learn how to solve a proportion. Okay, so what I need you guys to do, with your handout, we are going to create kind of like a foldable that has 3 flaps. So you should see a solid line. I want you to take on your foldable and fold over the solid line, so it should be blank on the outside, and that's solving proportions. You should be able to see that, okay, like that. So go ahead and fold it over, and then if you want to take your scissors, okay, once you fold it, then unfold it, and then take your scissors, and you're going to cut along those dotted lines, okay? So it should look like this when it's done. I'll tell you what we're going to write on the outside, okay? So fold it over, and then unfold it, and then cut along those 2 dotted lines. Okay. And then when you're ready for it, I will tell you what we will write on the outside. So we are talking about proportions today. Some of what we do today is really simple. Other proportions are a little bit more difficult to solve. But overall, I don't think proportions are too bad. So the first thing, I've already said proportion about 15 times today. So the first thing we want to talk about is, what is a proportion? So this is going to go on the outside of that first flap, okay? So the outside of that first flap, go ahead and write, what is a proportion? And if you open that first flap, it will tell you exactly what a proportion is, okay? A proportion, it's an equation that states 2 ratios are equal. Okay, that's already written there for you. Okay? Now, 2 ratios, remember a ratio, it's kind of in a way another word for a fraction. So a proportion simply says this fraction equals this fraction. Okay? So it could look like A over B equals C over D. A fraction equals a fraction. Sometimes today they are going to get a little bit more difficult. They might be something like x minus 3 over 4 equals 5 over 6. As long as it says a fraction equals a fraction, we can call this a proportion. Okay? Now, the big thing we're going to be talking about today is solving proportions. So on the outside of that middle flap, we are going to write, oh, not that. We're going to write how to solve a proportion. My goodness, it's not cooperating. How to solve a proportion. That is going on the outside of the middle flap. How to solve a proportion. All right. So there are 2 methods for solving proportions, okay? One of them, it's like a 1-step thing. It's super easy, super quick, awesome, but the problem is it doesn't always work. The second one, I also think, is pretty simple and pretty easy, and it works all of the time, but it takes a little bit more steps than the other one. Okay, so the 2 methods for solving the proportion. The first method is by using the multiplication property. Okay, so we're going to work out the same problem for both of these methods, so you can see that you get the same answer either way. So the problem we're going to work out says x over 3 equals 4 over 9. Okay, now, the multiplication property says you multiply each side by the denominator that's under the variable. So the denominator under the variable, in this case, is 3. So you're going to multiply both sides by 3. Now, the reason why we do this is because we're solving the equation for x, right? And if it's x divided by 3, to get rid of a divide by 3, we would multiply by 3. Those are going to cancel out. Now, on the right-hand side, we talked a little bit yesterday about cross-reducing. You're probably going to have to do some cross-reducing today. Those both have a 3 in common. That 3 will cancel out. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we would just leave this as 4 over 3. That method, 1 step, pretty quick and easy. The problem is it doesn't always work. So whenever you can't do the multiplication property, you have to use what's called cross products. Now, and I'll be honest, I almost always use cross products because it's not even a whole lot harder than that, and I know for a fact it's going to work every time. So, if we have the same problem, x over 3 equals 4 over 9. Okay? The cross product property tells me in this fraction, you can multiply up and across, and those products are equal. So, for example, when I have a over b equals c over d, if you multiplied a times d, up and across, whatever that is equal to up and across the other way, b times c. So that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to multiply up and across. Those two things are equal. So like this one, I would take x times 9, which is just 9x. That is equal to, the other direction is 3 times 4, which is 12. And then usually you have a 1 or a 2-step equation. Usually. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. But to solve for x, I divide by 9. Now this, I would have to reduce 12 over 9. If I divide out of 3 from both of these, we get 4 over 3. Same answer. Okay, like I said, I prefer the cross products property, but we will do both today just so you get experience with both, okay? Now, like I said, though, there's going to be some times where it's not possible to do the cross product property. If you have what I call an algebraic proportion, you cannot use the multiplication property. So in that last flap, we're going to write, what about algebraic proportions? Algebraic proportions. If you have an algebraic proportion, you have to use cross products. It's not possible, usually, to do the multiplication property. Now, how you're going to know if it's an algebraic fraction or algebraic proportion, honestly, it's going to look harder. That's kind of my easiest way to put it. Usually, it's going to have variables on both sides. Okay? If you've got an x on the left and an x on the right, you're not going to be able to use the multiplication property. Okay? If there's expressions in the numerator and or the denominator, meaning it's not just an x or a 3 or a 4 or 9. It might be like x minus 3. It's an expression. Okay? So some examples, or an example of an algebraic proportion might be x minus 3 over 4 equals x plus 2 over 3. So you can kind of see by looking at this, if you were going to do the multiplication property, which x are you supposed to solve for? Right, you multiply by 4 or 3, right? You can't do the multiplication property, so instead, you have to do cross products. Now, this is very important, guys. The idea is still the same. We're going to multiply up and across. They're equal to each other. But when I do that, when I take 3 times x minus 3, I have to take 3 times the entire thing. 3 times x minus 3. You have to put that x minus 3 in parentheses. Okay? And when you go up and across the other way, you have to take 4 times the whole thing, x plus 2. You have to put it in parentheses. Because I have to take 3 times x and minus 3, and I would get 3x minus 9. You have to multiply by both of those. And you have to take 4 times x and 4 times 2 to get 4x plus 8. Now, if you remember from whenever we solved equations, we want to distribute, which we did. We want to simplify by combining like terms. Nothing I can simplify. I need to get my variables on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I get negative 9 equals 4x minus 3x is just an x plus 8. And then to get rid of the plus 8, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. And we would get negative 17 equals x. Questions on any of that? Yes. Okay, when you are finished with that, this is going to get glued into page 21, yes. The second one is how to solve a proportion. How to solve a proportion. Okay, so glued into page 21, we will fill out our table of contents. This is section 2.7, and we're talking about proportions. Okay, so we are going to look at a couple of examples doing the multiplication property because it is easier, it is quicker. I mentioned a couple times it doesn't always work, but if it does work, it is easier and quicker. So I'll kind of show you how you're going to know if you can use the multiplication property when you get to your homework. The directions are going to say solve the proportion using the multiplication property. So that's kind of your hint there that you should be using the multiplication property. Okay? So number one, let's say we have negative 3/4 equals x over 26. Now how you're going to know if you can use the multiplication property, you need to find your variable. One, it has to be in the numerator. Okay, it is. It needs to be the only thing in the numerator. It is. And the denominator has to be just a number. Okay, so it's in the numerator, it's the only thing in the numerator, and then the 26 is the only thing in the denominator. So I can use the multiplication property. So we are going to multiply by that denominator to get rid of it. See how we can solve for x? Now over here, when I multiply by 26, remember you're going to have to do some cross-reducing. I would absolutely prefer you leave your answers as fractions today, not decimals. It's better to leave them as fractions because some of the decimals aren't going to be exact answers. This one would be, but let's just leave them as fractions today. So if I look to cross-reduce, 26 and 4, they have a 2 in common. So if I divide out of 2, I would get 13 and 2. And then I can multiply across. 13 times negative 3 is negative 39. 1 times 2 is 2. So there would be my answer. Okay, let's try another one of those. Number 2. 9 over 2 equals k over 25. Now once again, I know it says to use the multiplication property, but if you are going to use the multiplication property, your variable needs to be in the numerator. It needs to be the only thing in the numerator, and your denominator needs to be just a number. So we can use the multiplication property here. To get rid of that over 25, we're going to multiply both sides by 25 and see how those cancel out. Now, on the left-hand side, we would try to cross-reduce, but 25 and 2, they don't have anything in common. So for this one, we'd go ahead and multiply across. 25 times 9 gives me 225. And in your denominator, 2 times 1 gives you 2. So your answer would be 225 over 2. Okay, that's the multiplication property. Okay? Now, like I said, the rest of them, they're either going to tell you, hey, solve using the cross products method. Or like down here, they're going to say solve using any method, but you're going to have to use the cross product method. So let's look at number 3. Number 3 says 15 over a equals 3 over 2. Now I know this one says to use the cross product method, but let's talk about why you can't do the multiplication property. The a is the only thing on that side of the fraction bar, and then the 15 is the only thing on that one, but what's the problem? It's in the denominator. If you were to try to multiply by 15, those aren't going to cancel out because they're both in the numerator. So you wouldn't be able to do that this time, okay? You have to do cross products. So remember, cross products, you multiply up and across, those are equal to each other. So you would take 15 times 2, which is 30. That is equal to the other direction, a times 3 is 3a. And then this is nice because it's just a one-step equation. To solve for a, divide by 3, and we should have 10 equals a. Let's look at another rather simple one. 8 over p equals 3 over 10. number 3, right? The p is in the denominator. You can't do the multiplication property if the variable is in the denominator. So instead, we're going to use cross products. Guys, the biggest thing, it's really simple. Multiply up and across, they are equal. Okay, don't try to create another fraction or do anything crazy. Set them equal to each other. So we would take 8 times 10, which is 80. That equals, go the other direction. P times 3 is 3p. And then we're solving for p. So to get rid of the 3, we would divide both sides by 3. Now 80 over 3, we want to see if we could reduce, but 80 and 3 don't have anything in common. So we will just leave it as 80 over 3 for your answer. Okay, questions on anything so far? Okay, so those proportions are pretty simple to solve. We're going to look next at more algebraic fractions, so one where you're going to have to be a little more careful. So I have 4 of these for you guys. Okay, so number 5 says b plus 4 over 5 equals 7 over 4. Now, for this one, okay, the b is in the numerator, and the 5 is the only thing in the denominator, but the problem here is in the numerator I have b plus 4. Okay, so I can't do the multiplication property here. You would have to do cross products, okay? Guys, remember, the cross products are equal. So you're going to multiply up and across one way. 5 times 7 is 35. That's the easy way. When I multiply up and across the other way, be super, super careful here because I have a b plus 4 over here. So I have to take 4 times the quantity, b plus 4, the whole thing. So I'm going to have to distribute the 4. So the 35 equals stays the same. If I distribute the 4, we get 4b, and 4 times 4 gives you 16. Now this one is a two-step equation, so we'd subtract 16 from both sides. 35 minus 16 gives me 19, equals 4b. And then divide by 4. We would want to check and see if we could reduce, but 19 and 4 don't have anything in common, so we would just leave our answer as 19 over 4. Okay, let's look at one that takes it maybe one step further. If I have 2c over 11 equals c minus 3 over 4. 4. Yeah, thanks. That would have made a difference. Okay, so once again, you're going to have to use cross products because I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. I've got variables on both sides. I've got more than just the c, more than just c. There's no way, okay? So we're going to multiply up and across, but guys, they're equal to each other. So when I multiply up and across this way, I would take 11 times the quantity c minus 3. Now, when I multiply up and across the other way, I'm going to take 4, and if you want to put the 2c in parentheses, you absolutely can. Now, the difference is on these two sides. On the left side, I need to distribute the 11. On the right side, I'm not distributing the 4. How do I know I'm not really distributing the 4 to the 2 and the c? What's different between the left side and the right side? That's exactly right. The 2 and the c are connected. It's 2 times c. You don't do the distributive property when it's multiplication. This is just 4 times 2 c. 8. That's all that is. This is 11 times the quantity c minus 3. That minus sign right there is what tells you I need to distribute. So 11 times c is 11c. 11 times minus 3 is a minus 33. Okay, after you distribute, we always want to see if we can combine like terms. There are no terms to combine. Next, I have c's on both sides of the equation. So for this one, I'm actually going to subtract 11c from both sides. Now when I do that, I'm left with a negative 33. And on the right, 8c minus 11c gives me negative 3c. And then to get rid of the negative 3, we would divide by negative 3. And and we would get 11 equals C. Okay, questions on number 6. Okay, we're going to do number 7 together, and then I'm going to have you try number 8 on your own. So number 7 says C plus 1 over C minus 2 equals 4 over 7. So we know we're going to have to use cross products, so we're going to multiply up and across. They're going to be equal to one another. Now, I usually get this question. People ask, do I have to multiply this way first, or can I multiply this way first? It doesn't matter. The only thing that's going to change is they're going to flip sides of the equal sign, which doesn't matter. It means the same thing. So it does not matter which direction you go first. So for this one, I might take 4 times the quantity C minus 2. Remember, you have to distribute that 4. You're going to have to distribute that 4. And same thing on the other diagonal. It's going to be 7 times the quantity C plus 1. You're going to have to distribute the 7. So let's go ahead and do that. Distribute the 4. We have 4C minus 8. Distribute the 7. We'd have 7C plus 7. After we distribute, we check if we can combine like terms. There's nothing to combine. Next, I have variables on both sides. So I'm going to subtract 4C from both sides. Those are going to cancel out. So I have negative 8 equals 7C minus 4C is 3C plus 7. Then it's a two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 7. Negative 8 minus 7 is negative 15 equals 3C. And then finally divide by 3. Negative 15 divided by 3 gives me negative 5. Okay, last one, and I want you guys to try this one on your own. 2x minus 1 over 3 equals 4x plus 3 over 5. All right, look like you guys are all doing pretty well, okay? I love to see everybody creating a new equation, setting them equal, multiplying up and across. I saw a lot of this, 5 times the quantity, 2x minus 1, 3 times the quantity, 4x plus 3, and then I saw so many people distributing. We get 10x minus 5. We would get 12x plus 9. And then what I loved is I saw so many people, they weren't trying to move the 5 or the 9. They're like, no, I need to get my variables in the same place, so I'm going to subtract 10x. Love it. Love it. So we have negative 5 equals 2x plus 9. And then we have our two-step equation. Subtract 9. We have negative 14 equals 2x. Divide by 2, and we should get x equals negative 7.